Alright, the play area is now complete. We added another layer of logs to the low ends, and we brought in a bunch more wood chips, which are now entirely thawed, and we more or less leveled the area out. I added this fence to the back only to keep the 2-year-old from wandering off into the bramble patch. So now all we need to do is get a play set. But on today's video, we are going to plant some peony roots. We're going to transplant some oriental lilies from pots into the garden, and we're going to plant the very first dahlia tubers of the year. But before we do that, I got a load of compost just delivered, and I have a sandbank that I need to go spread that on. Well, it's finally warm enough at the end of April here in Minnesota that the local compost guys are delivering again. So I just had a full load of compost delivered, which is 14 yards, and today I'm going to be spreading that on the sandy banks on either side of the veggie garden. I'm not positive that this is enough compost to cover both banks, but we'll find out. I need to get some kind of ground cover growing across this bank to keep it from eroding away. Right now, there's basically nothing that's going to grow in the pure sand that we have here. But my theory is, if I spread the thinnest layer of compost across the area, that'll be just enough organic matter and nutrients that the hardiest of the plants will be able to take root and survive. And I honestly do not care what grows on this bank, as long as it roots and keeps the soil from washing away. So I'll be planting a mixture of all kinds of different seeds, and whatever takes hold, I'm happy to have. And in fact, because the compost is going to end up being thicker in some areas and thinner in other areas, we might end up with different plants favoring different spots, which I think would be fantastic. Well, that was a bit of work, but it's all done now. I was right that there wasn't quite enough compost to cover both banks, though there is a little bit left over. But we got this entire bank covered with at least a thin layer. Now we just need to get the seed mix put together that we're going to spread on this bank. But before we do that, we actually have some planting to do. We received an order of bulbs and tubers that I had placed back in January or February. And they actually showed up on Earth Day, which was kind of nice. Now we've already planted about 20 gladiola bulbs and a half dozen begonias in the cottage garden. What we have left is some dahlias and some peony roots. Now, we didn't actually have any idea where these were going to go when we ordered them, and knowing how bad our deer pressure is, we realized they really have to be planted somewhere pretty close to the house to have a chance. So yesterday, Mrs. Graywood and I cleared an additional garden bed here. This was a bunch of mulch filled with spirea bushes. We got all those pulled out, pulled up some landscape fabric, got a fresh layer of compost down. So now we're going to go ahead and get these peony roots planted here. This is a peony root. You can see the bottom area is the actual root, and you can see some new growth just starting to come out at the top. So it's a perfect time to get it in the ground. Now, peonies are notoriously sensitive about how deep they're planted. They need to be, they need to be planted just 1 or 2 inches of dirt over the crown of the root. If they get planted deeper than that, they'll still grow, but they'll never bloom. So our goal is to get this in the ground with just an inch or 2 of dirt over it. There we go.
Where are you going? Walking in the dirt. Don't touch that. Oh, yeah, that's a peony.
All right, now those should be good to go. Now normally I would water them in. We're supposed to get rain for the next 3 days, so I think that'll take care of it. Now, we also have some lilies that we want to get planted here. And these pots are lilies that we actually brought with us last summer when we moved here. We just brought the pots in the garage and overwintered them there, and now it's time to get the lily bulbs planted in the garden. Unfortunately, we waited a little bit too late, and as you can see, the lilies are actually starting to come up. You really don't want to move them after they've come up, unless you're moving them in the fall. So it's not a great time to do it. They'll survive it. There's just a chance that they may not bloom or we'll get a lot fewer blooms. So we're just gonna have to move them as carefully as we can. All right, now that we've pulled these up, we want to get these back in the ground as quickly as possible. So it's just a matter of digging a hole and burying them back at the same depth that they were in the pot. All right, now I just need to water these in, and we should be good to go. So we also got from Eden Brothers some dahlia tubers. We ordered a dinner plate dahlia collection, and we got just a handful to start us off this year. Now, dahlias are super heat-loving plants. So not only will they not survive the winter, we can't actually plant them in the ground until after June. So instead, what we do is about a month before, we'll plant them up in pots. We'll put these someplace warm inside the house and grow them on for about a month before planting them outside. So the important thing here is once we pot them up, I'm actually not going to water them until I start to see growth. And I'm just using potting soil here to pot them up. All right, so that was a pretty big tuber. Let's see what else we have here. So I am excited about starting these dahlias. Historically, we have not had a whole lot of success with dahlias. We get them when we plant them and they grow beautifully, but we have been terrible at actually pulling them up and overwintering them. And to be fair, I don't think we put a huge amount of effort into it. So it'll be very interesting this year to see if we can manage to bring them in at the end of the year and pop them up and overwinter them. And then next year, maybe even do some cuttings to propagate more. That said, I am not a huge fan of any kind of plant that I have to dig up and bring inside for the winter. To me, that's just a little bit too much effort. Dahlias are the one flower that is so amazing that I think it's worth the annoyance and the extra effort. All right, and we're done. I'm going to bring these inside. I'm not going to water them until they start to grow. And hopefully in about 4 weeks, we'll have nice strong plant starts that can be planted outside into the garden. Welcome back to my seed starting lair. Look at how fantastic the peppers that we planted are doing. The plants are compact and strong. In another month, they'll definitely be ready to go outside. But we're here today to put together a seed mix to spread on the bank outside the veg garden. So let me get these guys out of the way for a moment. All right, so the goal is to put together a seed mix that we can just spread straight onto the compost that we put out there. Oh. And I'll be taking seeds out of the great seed bin. As a base for this, I have a whole bunch of seed mixes in here that I bought from Eden Brothers. So the base of this is actually going to be a combination of two mixes. We're going to use the Midwest Wildflower seed mix. Aha! I got 1 pound of their dry area wildflower seed mix. Now, in addition to those, I have a bag of prairie grass that I got from Prairie Moon Nursery, and they specialize in native plants. And this is Little Blue Stem, which is a prairie grass, which I think should do pretty well in the area. So in addition to these guys, I'm also going to add some packets of seeds in and just mix it all together. So let's start with the dry area mix. This is the Midwest Wildflower seed mix from them. And I don't want to use all of this. This is a 5-pound bag. Most of this is going to get used over in the yard in the orchard area. I just want to add some of this in, maybe another pound, to fill out that. And then, these seeds are very light. I'm a little concerned these seeds aren't actually going to spread with the seed spreader very well, because they're so light compared to everything else. I might actually keep these separate and spread these seeds separately by hand. So then I'm going to add a couple of things to this that it didn't come with, starting with common milkweed. Common milkweed tends to do pretty well in dry soil. I think there's a decent chance that it'll do pretty well here. I'm not going to use all of this packet. I'm going to save some of this to go in the rest of the yard as well. Then we have yarrow. I have a nice mix of different colored yarrow. And so this will be a very, very small contribution. Now I'm also going to add in one of my all-time favorite flowers, Viola tricolor, which is the classic Johnny Jump Up. It's a short-lived perennial, but it spreads very readily by seeds, and it's almost like a weed, so it seems like the perfect thing to sprinkle in there. Once again, I'm not going to use all the seeds, because I also want to put some in the mix that's going to go into the yard, and I want to save some of them for the cottage garden. And finally, I'm adding in common mint. This is the plant that is essentially just a weed. It's the plant that everyone warns you never to plant in the ground in your garden because it spreads via runners as well as spreading via seeds and can get out of control and smells wonderful. I would love to have a bank full of mint. So I will be happy, ooh, those are tiny seeds. I will be happy with any of this that manages to sprout. All right, so now I'm going to take this seed mix and just mix it up by hand. Well, I think that's pretty good with that and our prairie grass seed. I think we are ready to get that bank seeded. I'm going to start seeding with the little blue stem prairie grass seed. It is in fact too light to work in the handheld seeder, so I'm going to have to sow this by hand. I do have another bag, so I can use this entire bag along this bank. It's supposed to rain tomorrow, so now's the perfect time to get the seed down. It's not very windy. Hopefully the wind won't pick up and start blowing the seed around. All right, well that went pretty well. I actually have quite a bit left over after covering this entire area. So that's the little blue stem prairie grass. Next up is the wildflowers. For the wildflower seed, I think I can get away with using this little handheld grass seeder. All right. Not working very well. Okay, it looks like I'm going to be seeding this by hand as well. All right, well, it's a little bit slower than using the seeder, but got the job done. This bank is now pretty nicely covered in both wildflower and prairie grass seed, and it's supposed to rain tomorrow and the next day. So with 2 days of rain, get all of this soaked in really nicely, and hopefully within a few weeks, we start to see stuff springing up all along this bank. Well, it's not exactly flat, but there is a nice butt-shaped indent right here that fits me pretty well. And it's nice to have a seat right here by the play area. Well, that's all I have for you on this video. We are, however, only about 2 weeks away from the last frost date in my area of Zone 4, and that means there is an immense amount of work to be done. Well, until next time, happy gardening.